It was a bright Thursday morning in small-town Texas when Maria Rodriguez pulled her old Honda Civic into the crowded parking lot of Jefferson High School. She stepped out carefully, smoothing down her simple black dress, the same one she wore to church every Sunday and to every important occasion in her life. There were no fancy decorations on it, no expensive jewelry around her neck, just a small silver cross that had belonged to her mother. Maria wasn't anyone special by most people's standards. She worked double shifts at the local diner, served coffee and eggs to truckers and construction workers, and never complained about the long hours or the aching feet. She lived in a small apartment on the edge of town, drove a car with 200,000 miles on it and shopped at discount stores. But today was different. Today was the most important day of her life. Her son David was graduating as valedictorian. She walked toward the school building with quiet determination, clutching the graduation invitation in her weathered hands. The paper was slightly crumpled from being folded and unfolded so many times, she had read it over and over, hardly believing it was real. David Rodriguez, valedictorian, full scholarship to MIT, first in his family to graduate high school, let alone college. The auditorium was packed. Families filled every seat, cameras flashed constantly, and the air buzzed with excitement and pride. Maria made her way to the front section, where the families of honor students were supposed to sit. She had her ticket. David had made sure she got the special VIP family pass that came with his valedictorian status. She found her seat in the third row and sat down quietly, her hands folded in her lap. Around her, other families chatted loudly, comparing their children's achievements, showing off expensive cameras, and adjusting their designer clothes. Maria said nothing, just sat there with a peaceful smile, waiting for the ceremony to begin. But peace didn't last long. She noticed the stares first. The way some of the other parents looked at her simple dress, her work-worn hands, her humble appearance. Then came the whispers. Who is she? Does she belong here? This section is for VIP families. She looks like she works in the kitchen. Maria heard every word but kept her eyes forward. She had faced worse than whispers. She had worked 3 jobs to keep David in school, had gone without meals so he could have lunch money, had worn the same clothes for years so he could have new school supplies. A few judgmental looks weren't going to move her from her son's graduation. That's when the security guards approached. 2 men in uniform, both looking stern and official, walked directly toward her. The first one, a heavy-set man with a clipboard, leaned down close to her seat. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to see your ticket." Maria calmly reached into her purse and handed over the VIP family pass. The guard examined it closely, frowning. "This says Rodriguez, but you're sitting in the valedictorian family section." "I am Mrs. Rodriguez," Maria replied softly. "David Rodriguez is my son." The second guard, younger with mirrored sunglasses, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we've had some complaints. This section is reserved for immediate family members of honor students only." "I am his mother," Maria said, her voice still calm but firm. "Look, lady," the first guard said, his voice getting louder, "we need to see some ID that proves you belong here. This ticket could belong to anyone." The conversation was drawing attention now. Other families had stopped talking and were watching the scene unfold. Maria felt the heat of dozens of eyes on her, but she didn't move. "I have every right to be here," she said quietly. "This is my son's graduation." "Ma'am, please don't make this difficult," the younger guard said. "We're going to need you to move to the general seating area." "No." The word came out firm and clear. Maria looked up at both guards, her back straight, her voice steady. "I'm not moving. I have worked for 18 years to be here today. I have earned this seat." The auditorium had gone quiet now. The whispers stopped. Everyone was watching. And then something extraordinary happened. One by one, men began to stand up throughout the auditorium. Not just any men, these were different. They moved with purpose, with discipline, with the unmistakable bearing of military service. 10 of them in total, scattered throughout the crowd, all standing simultaneously as if responding to a silent command. They walked down the aisles, converging toward the front of the auditorium, toward Maria. The guards froze, unsure of what was happening. The audience watched in stunned silence as these 10 men formed a protective semicircle behind Maria's chair. No one spoke. No one needed to. The first man to reach her was tall, with graying hair and kind eyes. He looked at the guards and spoke quietly but clearly, "This woman has every right to be here." Another man, stockier with tattoos visible on his forearms, nodded toward Maria. "Ma'am, you stay right where you are." A third man, African-American with close-cropped hair and the posture of a career soldier, addressed the guards directly, "Is there a problem here, gentlemen?" The guards looked around nervously. They were facing 10 men who clearly commanded respect, men who stood with the quiet confidence that comes from real authority. We were just checking tickets," the first guard stammered. "Her ticket is valid," said a fourth man, this one with a slight southern accent. "Her son is the valedictorian. She belongs in this section more than anyone." The younger guard with the sunglasses took a step back. "We didn't mean any disrespect." "Then I suggest you return to your posts," said the tall man with graying hair. His voice was calm but carried unmistakable authority. The guards looked at each other, then at the 10 men, then at Maria, who sat quietly through the entire exchange. Without another word they turned and walked away. The 10 men remained standing behind Maria for a moment longer, then quietly returned to their seats throughout the auditorium. The crowd slowly began to murmur again, but the energy had completely changed. Maria sat in her chair, hands still folded, a small smile on her face. She had not asked for help, had not expected it, but it had come anyway. And soon she learned why. During the ceremony, as families were called up to receive special recognition, the principal made an announcement that surprised everyone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have some very special guests with us today. 10 veterans who served with distinction in various branches of our military are here to honor one of our own. These men served alongside Staff Sergeant Elena Rodriguez, who made the ultimate sacrifice serving our country in Afghanistan 3 years ago. They are here today to honor her memory and to witness her nephew David receive his diploma as our valedictorian." The auditorium fell silent. Maria felt tears welling up in her eyes as the pieces fell into place. The principal continued, "Staff Sergeant Rodriguez was a field medic who saved countless lives during her deployment. She was killed while treating wounded soldiers under enemy fire. Her nephew David has been raised by his Aunt Maria Rodriguez, who worked tirelessly to ensure he could achieve his dreams of becoming a doctor, just like his mother wanted." Now the whispers in the crowd were different. They were whispers of understanding, of respect, of shame for their earlier judgments. When David's name was called as valedictorian, the 10 veterans stood again and began a slow, measured applause. The entire auditorium joined in, but their applause followed the rhythm set by these 10 men, steady, respectful, honoring not just David's achievement but the sacrifice that made it possible. David walked across the stage with tears in his eyes. He accepted his diploma, then turned to the audience. His eyes found Maria in the 3rd row, surrounded by empty chairs where his classmates' parents sat in expensive clothes with expensive cameras. He raised his diploma high, not toward the crowd but toward her. Toward the woman who had given up everything so he could be here. Toward the aunt who had become his mother when his real mother died serving her country. "This is for you, Tia Maria," he said into the microphone, his voice breaking slightly. "And for my mom who would be so proud." The standing ovation that followed lasted for 5 full minutes. After the ceremony in the parking lot, Maria was approached by the 10 veterans. The tall man with graying hair stepped forward first. "Ma'am, we wanted to introduce ourselves properly. I'm Sergeant First Class Williams. I served with your sister Elena." Each man introduced himself, sharing brief memories of Elena Rodriguez, the medic who had saved their lives, who had run into danger to help others, who had died doing what she loved, helping people. "Elena talked about her family all the time," said one of the men. "She was so proud of her nephew David, and she always talked about her sister Maria who was raising him. She said you were the strongest woman she knew. When we heard David was graduating valedictorian, we knew we had to be here," added another. "Elena would have wanted us to make sure you were treated with the respect you deserve." Maria listened quietly, tears streaming down her face. "She was the hero," she whispered. "I just tried to keep her promise to take care of David." "Ma'am," said Sergeant Williams, "heroes come in many forms. Your sister saved lives on the battlefield. You saved a life by raising that boy to become the man he is today. That makes you a hero too." As the sun began to set over the small Texas town, Maria stood in the parking lot surrounded by 10 men who had traveled from across the country to honor her sister's memory and to make sure she knew she was valued, respected, and appreciated. David approached, still wearing his graduation cap, carrying his diploma. "Tia, who are these men?" "They served with your mother," Maria said softly. "They came to see you graduate." David looked at each of the 10 men, understanding finally dawning in his eyes. These weren't just random veterans. These were his mother's brothers in arms, men who owed their lives to Elena Rodriguez. "Thank you," he said simply. "All of you. Thank you for being here." "Your mother saved our lives," said one of the men. "The least we could do was make sure her son's graduation day was perfect." As the veterans began to leave, returning to their cars and their own families, Sergeant Williams lingered for a moment. "Mrs. Rodriguez," he said, "Elena used to say that real strength isn't about being the loudest person in the room. It's about standing firm when everyone wants you to move. Today you showed us what she meant." Maria nodded, unable to speak through her tears. "And one more thing," he added. "Elena was wrong about one thing. She used to say you were the strongest woman she knew. Truth is, you're the strongest person any of us have ever known." That evening, as Maria sat in her small apartment looking at David's diploma on the kitchen table, she thought about the day's events. She thought about the guards who had tried to move her, about the families who had judged her, about the 10 men who had stood up for her without being asked. But mostly she thought about Elena. Her sister, the war hero, the medic, the woman who had died saving others. Elena had always been the brave one, the strong one, the one who fought battles and saved lives. Today Maria realized she had been fighting her own battle all along. Every double shift at the diner, every sacrifice she made for David's education, every moment she stood strong when the world told her she wasn't enough, all of it had been preparing her for this day. She wasn't a decorated soldier. She didn't have medals or commendations. She was just a simple woman who had raised a boy to become a man, who had turned him into someone his mother would be proud of. And sometimes that's the most heroic thing of all. The next morning found Maria back at the diner, serving coffee to the early shift workers. But something was different. Word had spread through the small town about what had happened at the graduation. The story of the simple woman who wouldn't be moved, and the 10 veterans who had stood with her. Customers looked at her differently now. They saw past the uniform, past the humble exterior, to the strength underneath. They saw a woman who had raised a valedictorian while working 3 jobs, who had honored her sister's sacrifice by ensuring her son achieved his dreams. As Maria poured coffee and took orders, she carried herself a little taller. Not with pride, but with the quiet confidence that comes from knowing your worth doesn't depend on what others think of you. Later that week she received a call from David. He had started his freshman orientation at MIT, and he was struggling with the transition from small-town Texas to one of the world's most prestigious universities. "Tia," he said over the phone, "everyone here is so smart, so accomplished. Their parents are doctors and lawyers and professors. I feel like I don't belong." Maria sat quietly for a moment, remembering her own feelings in that auditorium, surrounded by families who seemed so much more important than her. "Mijo," she said finally, "let me tell you something your mother taught me. It doesn't matter where you come from or what you look like or how much money your family has. What matters is what you do with the opportunities you're given. You earned your place at that school. You belong there just as much as anyone else. But what if I can't keep up? What if I'm not smart enough?" "David," Maria said, her voice firm but loving, "you are the son of a woman who died saving lives, and you were raised by a family that never gave up on you. You have strength in your blood and determination in your heart. You don't just belong at that school is lucky to have you." 3 months later David called again. This time his voice was different, confident, excited. "Tia, I wanted to tell you something. I'm at the top of my class in organic chemistry. My professor asked me to be a teaching assistant next semester. And I got accepted into the Pre-Med Honor Society." Maria smiled, unsurprised. "Of course you did, Mijo. I never doubted it." "There's something else," David continued. "I've been thinking a lot about what I want to do with my medical degree. I want to specialize in combat medicine. I want to help soldiers like Mom did." Maria felt her heart swell with pride and sadness at the same time. "She would be so proud of you." "I know she would. And Tia? I'm proud of you too. I know what you sacrificed for me. I know how hard you worked. I know you're the reason I'm here." "We're family," Maria said simply. "That's what family does." Years passed. David graduated from MIT with highest honors, then from medical school, then completed his residency in trauma surgery. True to his word, he specialized in combat medicine and was commissioned as a medical officer in the Army. The day he graduated from medical school, Maria sat in the front row wearing the same black dress she had worn to his high school graduation. This time no one questioned her right to be there. This time, the 10 veterans came not as protectors but as honored guests, invited by David himself to witness the completion of a journey that had begun with his mother's sacrifice and been sustained by his aunt's love. As David walked across the stage to receive his medical degree, he paused at the podium and spoke to the crowd. "I want to thank someone very special today. My Aunt Maria Rodriguez, who raised me after my mother was killed serving our country. She worked 3 jobs to put me through school. She never missed a parent conference or a school play. She taught me that real strength comes not from what you have, but from what you're willing to give up for the people you love. He looked directly at Maria, tears in his eyes. Tia, you saved my life by giving me yours. Everything I am, everything I will become, I owe to you. The auditorium erupted in applause, but Maria barely heard it. She was thinking about Elena, about the promise she had made to take care of her nephew, about all the days and nights and years that had led to this moment. After the ceremony, as they walked through the parking lot, David took Maria's arm. Tia, I have something for you. He handed her a small velvet box. Inside was a pin, the medical corps insignia, gold and gleaming. I want you to have this. You may not wear a uniform, but you're as much a part of the medical corps as I am. You saved a life, mine. You kept someone alive who will now go on to save others. That makes you a medic too. Maria looked at the pin, then at David, then at the 10 veterans who had become like family over the years. I'm just a simple woman, she said quietly. No, said Sergeant Williams, who had remained close to the family through all these years. You're extraordinary. You just never needed anyone else to tell you that. As the sun set over another graduation ceremony, as another chapter closed and another began, Maria Rodriguez stood surrounded by the people she loved most in the world. She was still simple, still humble, still the same woman who served coffee at a small-town diner. But she was also the woman who had refused to be moved when the world tried to push her aside. She was the woman who had turned a tragedy into triumph, who had raised a hero while remaining quietly heroic herself. And as she pinned the medical corps insignia to her simple black dress, she finally understood what her sister Elena had tried to tell her all those years ago. Real strength doesn't shout, it stands. It stands firm when others try to move it. It stands tall when others try to diminish it. It stands strong when others try to break it. And sometimes, when it stands long enough and firm enough, it inspires others to stand with it. The simple woman from small-town Texas had learned the most important lesson of all. You don't have to be famous to be significant. You don't have to be powerful to be strong. You don't have to be recognized to be a hero. You just have to stand.